Welcome everyone to our very popular webinar, Parent Training, Potty Training for Children with Special Needs. Today we have Aubrey Zaruba from Kids on the Move. She is a child development specialist and a leader over at Kids on the Move. She is going to be presenting today about potty training for children with special needs. We will have time for questions throughout the presentation and at the end. And I'm going to go ahead and let Aubrey take over and start the slides.
Thank you so much. It has been a little bit of a tradition the past few years to have the opportunity to talk a little bit about potty training, always a hot topic in working with children. And as Sylvia mentioned, I'm a child development specialist at Kids on the Move. And that's probably like the extent of my expertise in potty training. Before I was at Kids on the Move, I was doing ABA therapy with kids with autism, and we definitely did some pretty intensive potty training at that time. And at Kids on the Move, I'm much more of a coach to families as opposed to a therapist. And we do a lot of brainstorming and problem solving and things like that, but I'm definitely not the one in the trenches of potty training. So today we're going to talk a little bit about some of my thoughts and ideas on potty training, some things I've learned over the past over 20 years working with kids, specifically with special needs. And then we'll, like Sylvia mentioned, we'll have some time for questions at the end, but also if you have any questions as we move along, feel free to pipe in. We will have a pretty hard stop by 11 o'clock just to give you the time that you need for your day, as well as for me to get to appointments that I have. But my information is on that first slide. You're more than welcome to reach out to me via email if you have specific questions that you didn't get a chance to ask today, or if you felt like you didn't have time to ask your question. Please feel free to reach out, and I'm more than happy to share, any ideas and thoughts I have. Potty training is a big topic. Like I said, I know it's something that is on people's minds, particularly as kids start to get a little bit older. You start wondering, how is this ever going to work and things like that. So once again, feel free to unmute yourself and ask questions. As we have people joining, please keep yourself muted while we have the presentation, just so that if you have any background noise going on, that won't be reflected in the video, but you are more than welcome to unmute yourself and ask a question or type it in the chat at any time. So our next slide is just going to have just kind of a few of the resources that I use to kind of develop this presentation. I will say as well, if you're joining us and you've joined us in previous years, the presentation is the same. Hopefully, if this is a second or third time around for you, you'll get something new out of it. But the slides itself will be the same. So these are a couple sources that I've used to kind of share the information. There's so much information out there on potty training. And honestly, a lot of it does just come from experience, things I've experienced as I've worked with kids, talking to other parents, things like that. So we're going to dive right in and get started in kind of moving ahead on our slides here to, I say, first things first. Before we start talking strategies, techniques, things like this, I always like to help people evaluate their readiness for potty training. And we often talk about child readiness. We talk about, making sure the child has certain signs, and we're going to talk about that in a minute. But before we talk about that, I first want to talk about parent or caregiver readiness, something that we don't necessarily always consider when we decide to dive into potty training. Number one, as the parent or caregiver, do you have time? Do you have the time that it may take to do this potty training? Do you have the patience? How realistic are your expectations, particularly in the world of special needs, dealing with children who may need a little extra teaching, a little extra coaching when it comes to getting fully potty trained? How much patience do we have at the current time in our lives to be able to help them with that extra learning that they may need? Are you prepared for your child to have independence when it comes to using the toilet? Oftentimes, as we're learning, we're not always the cleanest and tidiest. And is that something that you are prepared for at the time to allow your child to have that independence? And are you set up for success? So we're going to talk a little bit more about what that means to be set up for success. But I think these are some really good questions to ask yourself before you start the process. Because if you as the parent and or caregiver aren't ready to start, we're probably going to run into some challenges. So the next thing is to kind of look at child readiness. So how ready is your child to actually be able to become potty trained? Do they have bladder control? Are you noticing they're able to stay dry for several hours at a time? Are they waking up dry after a nap and then eventually at night as well? Are they acknowledging that they have a wet diaper and or the need to urinate? So are we noticing some signs that they have the ability to control their bladder functions? And then second, their bowel control. Are their bowel movements on a schedule? Do you kind of anticipate when you're going to need to change a diaper? Um, do they stop their play, hide, go to a specific place to have a bowel movement? Do they acknowledge a need for a diaper change and or a need to have a bowel movement? So it's not that we need to have every single one of these signs in order for potty training to be successful, but I think it's important to evaluate the readiness in terms of, are we seeing signs that there is bladder control? Are we seeing signs that there is bowel control? If we're not seeing signs of that control, we are going to have a bit of an uphill battle when it comes to actually teaching our kids to use the toilet rather than to use their diaper. There's also some more readiness factors to consider. So I think those bladder and bowel control things are good to evaluate first. And if we're starting to think, yeah, I think so, I think we do have those, then we can kind of move on to their emotional readiness. Are they, are we seeing complaints about wet and dirty diapers? Are they anticipating the need to go before it happens? Are they noticing differences between clean and not clean? And not just specifically with a diaper, but just in general. Are they able to kind of identify when things are clean versus when they're not clean? And that would be in the sense of like, maybe their high chair tray, if they're in a high chair still, or their table or counter or wherever, maybe it's clean, there's nothing on it, and then through the course of a meal there becomes crumbs and food and maybe a spilled yogurt or something, and now all of a sudden that space is no longer clean. Do they notice the difference between that kind of clean versus soiled, in that sense? And then do they like to be independent and do things for themselves? We've probably seen with kids from time to time that I do it stage, which can sometimes be a bit frustrating, but it is a good sign that kids are ready to take control over their toileting needs. Again, we don't have to have all of these, but they are good signs that kids are becoming more ready. Also, their self-care readiness. Are they able to help with dressing and undressing? In order to become fully independent with using the toilet, we have to be able to pull our pants down, pull our pants back up. Do they help with hand washing? When you put them, under the sink, you put their hands under there, are they starting to rub their hands together? Do they know they need to get the soap? That type of thing. Are they drinking from a cup for most of their liquids? Drinking an 8-ounce bottle makes it a lot harder to stay dry. So if they are still drinking from a bottle quite a bit, we may notice that we're not quite there yet in terms of being fully ready, to be able to, have that control, have that bladder control that we need. I saw something in the chat, and I think it was pertaining, yes, being able to pull their pants up and down. Okay, that's what I thought we were saying here. So, I mean, to have full independence, yes, that is true. If you are just sort of introducing the idea of potty training, introducing the idea of using the toilet, then it doesn't mean they have to be fully independent with their clothes, but they can't be fully independent with their toileting until they're independent with their clothes. So for people who want to get started, even though maybe they're not seeing these readiness signs, that's one thing that I recommend starting with, is helping them learn how to pull their pants down, especially because sometimes when kids need to go, they need to go right now. And if they're not able to get their pants pulled down, we're going to have more accidents. So pulling their pants back up and when I say pants, I mean, pants, shorts, skirts, leggings, whatever kids are wearing, on the bottom half here, they need to be able to have the ability to get that down. And then same thing if they're wearing underwear or whatever they're wearing. Of course, if they're in a diaper and you're working on potty training, it's going to take a little more effort. So we're not really trying to teach kids to take off their own diapers, but we'll talk about pull up a little bit later. And then the next thing we talk about when it comes to readiness is communication readiness. So on our next slide, we're going to talk a little bit more about what are some things we need for communication readiness. Number one, we need to start out with our understanding. How well are they understanding language in general? So are they able to follow some simple directions? Are they able to imitate some simple actions? Do they understand the difference between wet and dry, clean and dirty? Can they sit for at least 5 minutes? That kind of means, like, are they able to sit in a chair of some sort for a decent amount of time? For some kids, in order to have a bowel movement, they need to be able to sit on the toilet for 5 minutes or even more. And so we need them to have that ability just in playtime or other times throughout the day before they can have that success on the toilet. Are they responding to praise for their accomplishment? So these are some things we're looking at in terms of how much are our kids understanding us. And then we're going to move into some more communication readiness by their expressive communication. How are they communicating with us? Are they using gestures, signs, pictures, or words to communicate with us? Do they have a specific strategy to communicate the need to go? So you may have a child that's not verbal, but they have good communication strategies. Again, it could be pictures, signs, gestures, a device, various things. If they have a way to communicate, that's great. It doesn't have to be verbal. And then being able to communicate the need that they need to go. So communication in general, but then also being able to communicate with us. I need to go potty. I need to go to the bathroom, things like that. Again, it doesn't have to be a word, but it does need to be some way that we can communicate that together. And then the next thing is their motor readiness. Have they been kind of walking and stooping for 6 months to a year? So if they're not mobile enough to kind of walk around, stoop down, stand back up, that may impact their ability to sit independently on the toilet. And then picking up small objects kind of indicates their readiness with motor development in general. So in order to use the toilet, we don't need to be able to use a pincer grasp and pick up a small object, but that is just kind of a sign that their motor development has progressed to the point where they might be ready for toilet training. I'm not sure if somebody unmuted to ask a question or if that was accidental. And I think there was also a question in the chat. Can putting hands down in their diapers mean that they need to go or are already wet or need changes? Great question. The answer to that is yes. Yes to all of those things. Kids put their hands down their diapers, I think, for various things. Sometimes they're bothered by their soiled diaper. Sometimes they've discovered that their hands can go down their pants. Sometimes they enjoy the sensation of having their hands down their pants. Sometimes they're playing, experimenting, exploring. So it could be a sign of readiness, but it's not necessarily a guaranteed sign of readiness. And that gets frustrating as you're trying to determine if it's time to start potty training or if they're showing these signs of readiness. And I think that's why a lot of times potty training can be challenging, because it's a lot of guesswork. Honestly, it's, I think I'm seeing the signs, I'm going to try it. You try it, you're met with some lack of success. Everybody's frustrated. And sometimes we do give up, and we'll talk about that a little bit more. So those are all of our kind of readiness signs. Now that we've talked about readiness, we are going to get into actually now getting ourselves ready once we've decided we're ready and our kids are showing those signs. Does anybody have any questions just on those readiness signs that we talked about? I'm not hearing any unmuting or things popping up in the chat. If you do think of questions, again, feel free to pop them in the chat or unmute, or we can also go over them at the end as well. So now that we're all ready, let's get ready. Here are some ideas of things that I have seen success with in the past. This is not the way to potty train. These are just some ideas, some suggestions. Like most things in parenting and child development, I think that we kind of have to take the information we have, gather up the information, and decide what's going to be the right fit for our kids, our families, things like that. So I like to use a chart to track their patterns for a week or two before starting, so that you kind of have in mind, when are they having bowel movements during the day? When are they having wet diapers? How long are they able to go in between having a soiled diaper? So let's say they wake up dry. When is the first time that you notice that they're wet? I know with diapers, like obviously diapers are absorbent. They're meant to be absorbent. So sometimes it's kind of hard to tell for sure when was the first time that they soiled their diaper. So, these can be rough guesses as well, but just having some sort of tracking system doesn't have to be anything formal or fancy, but just to give you an idea of what to anticipate for their patterns. As you start tracking for a week or two, if you start noticing there are no patterns, then we might go back to those readiness signs and think, I'm not sure if we're quite ready yet. I thought we were, but maybe we're not. Or acknowledging, I think we're going to go ahead and start, but we are going to have to, just kind of keep an eye and kind of know that maybe we don't have that consistency yet. The next thing is to gather the supplies that you're going to be using. Here again are some ideas for some supplies that you might find beneficial. Some rewards, whether they be small rewards or bigger rewards. I kind of like a combination of both. I like for kids to have a reward for any type of success. So depending on your child, you may find that they will happily sit on the toilet for as long as you put them there. In that case, they may not need a reward to sit there. You may have another child who, the second you put them on the potty, they are reacting in a certain way, whether it's crying or flailing or protesting. So we may need to build them up to just sitting there. Some kids even need to practice sitting on the toilet with the lid closed and their clothes on, just to give themselves that time to practice. So I like having those small rewards for those small things that turn into bigger things as they have success with them. And then as time goes on, sometimes we're working towards a bigger reward of some kind. Sometimes we don't have that level of understanding that I'm working towards earning this big prize. So I think the smaller intermittent rewards can sometimes help with that. Things like treats, stickers, and these are things, of course, as a parent, you get to decide what types of rewards you like for your child. So if you typically don't use food rewards, there's nothing that says you need to use food rewards. There's lots of other kinds. If that's something you're okay with, that's an option. Food coloring in the toilet water can be kind of fun, just changing the toilet water to a different color if they sit there or if they use it, or things like that. Some like extra one-on-one time, whatever you find to be rewarding. The thing we really have to keep in mind is our rewards need to be motivating to the child. So we just need to think about, what are the things they like? If you're going to use some type of system where they're earning small rewards, building up to something bigger, it may be preparing a sticker chart, gathering your stickers and preparing the chart. It may be something like using a jar where they're filling it up with cotton balls or craft pom-poms or different things like that. Just making sure we have our rewards prepared before we get started. The next thing we need to have to get ready is our underwear that we're going to be using. Some people like to use kind of a transitional training pants type of underwear. Other people just go straight to whatever underwear you're going to have them in. Whatever the case is, when we're really diving into potty training, diapers aren't going to really help us because, again, they're so absorbent. Kids oftentimes don't even know they're wet, and that's the whole purpose of diapers. Pull-ups, I definitely have some thoughts on pull-ups. A pull-up is a diaper. It is intended to absorb things and work and function as a diaper. The difference obviously being that they can pull it on and off as opposed to the sticker tabs that our traditional diapers have, or cloth diapers, the snaps and things like that. The thing that I like about pull-ups is that they are absorbent, so it can cut down on accidents. The thing that I don't like about pull-ups is it does make the child feel like they're in a diaper. They are more convenient, but not necessarily more helpful. So one thing I like to do when using pull-ups is actually to have underwear first and then a pull-up over the underwear, so that if there is an accident, there's a small mess, but not a large mess. So if your child is just in underwear and they have an accident, then you've got the underwear, the pants, the floor, the whole thing to clean up. If they have a pull-up over the top of their underwear, they're still going to feel the accident, but it's not going to create as much of a mess for you. So that's kind of how I like to use pull-ups. I don't really like to use pull-ups as underwear because, again, they're just not really functioning as underwear besides the pulling up and down part. A step stool is probably going to be helpful, for one, so your child can get to the sink easily. And then also, they oftentimes will need a stool to put their feet on while they're sitting on the potty. You may choose to use a potty seat or a child-sized potty. That's a really just individual personal choice. There are pros and cons to having those potty seats or small toilet. One thing that's nice is oftentimes it's a more appropriate size for the child. The downside of it is you don't necessarily have it with you everywhere you go. So I think it depends on you and your child. Some kids just won't do it on the regular sized toilet, and they will kind of warm up to potty training with a smaller toilet or an insert for the toilet. So again, that's a personal choice that you'll have to kind of decide what works best for you. Okay, now we're going to talk about a few different approaches that we can use. Again, like I mentioned in the beginning, there are definitely different methods of potty training, and there are some programs that you can purchase, online programs, or just different resources. I'm not really here today to promote any specific program. I think that if you decide you want to use a specific program, that's totally great and fine. I don't have any affiliation with any specific program, and at the risk of promoting one over another, I just am not even going to mention like specific programs necessarily, but they're easily searchable on the internet. So there are, like I said, there are things you can buy, but there are some other ways to kind of determine what seems like the best fit for your child and what seems more like the best fit for you as a parent and caregiver or your family. So the first approach is kind of more of a gradual or casual training where we're kind of just introducing the concept of the toilet here and there. Maybe we're going to sit on the toilet before we have a bath, or maybe before we get dressed in the morning, we're going to sit on the toilet. There's kind of a no pressure approach. We're still wearing diapers at this point. We may switch to a pull up, but not with the intention that we're really actively potty training, but we're just kind of warming up to the idea of using the toilet. Another thing that I don't have written on here, but something I like to do as we kind of do this more gradual or casual training is to start talking about the bathroom itself. And if we notice maybe they're about to have a bowel movement, we try to encourage them to go into the bathroom. Or we may start changing diapers in the bathroom so that we talk about potty happens in the bathroom. so that they're kind of just, again, warming up to the idea with not a lot of pressure. In this case, we're kind of asking them if they want to try sitting on the toilet, if they want to try using the toilet. If they say or indicate yes, then we can give them the opportunity. If they say or indicate no, then we may just say, okay, that's fine, we'll try again another time. So very low pressure in this approach. There's also the 3-day method, or the flooding procedure. This is basically where you stay home for 3 days at minimum, and you offer a lot of liquid. So the idea in this case is that we are giving a lot of liquid so that they have to use the bathroom more frequently than when they just have kind of their normal amount of liquid. We're looking for frequent trips to the toilet to try and catch them when they need to go. So the hope is that we're going to get them going in the toilet as opposed to going in their diaper. Some people who do this method even choose to be diaper and pants free for those 3 days. Again, that's a very personal choice, something you have to decide if that's something you want to try or not. But the idea is that we are going to really push the potty for a few days and see if that can, kind of connect and click for them. The next approach on the next slide is more of a scheduled training that we can do. So we are going to dress in, pants and underwear. We're going to be fully dressed, and we're going to likely need to have some backups available. And we are going to have the child pull their pants down and pull their pants up. In this, I'm giving the example of sitting on the toilet every 30 minutes. You may start doing that and find every 30 minutes is too often, or you may find it's not often enough. We're going to sit on the toilet every 30 minutes for at least 2 minutes. We might use a visual timer. There are plenty of apps available. You can just search in your app store for visual timer if you're not using one already. And it will kind of give them that visual clue of how long they need to be sitting there on the toilet. And we're going to reward them for sitting. As long as they sit there, they get the reward. And then kind of a big, huge reward with very specific praise, such as good job going potty, or, we're not going to use generics like good job, you did it, way to go. We're going to try to be specific. And the potty words that you use are, again, up to your family. So it could be like good job going potty, or it could be you went pee in the toilet, or whatever words you decide to use. And then we're going to wash hands. And then we're going to check their underwear about every 5 minutes for an accident or signs that they need to go. If we kind of start seeing that potty dance that a lot of people are familiar with, or if we see them start to go and hide because maybe they need to have a bowel movement, we're going to try to get them to the toilet. If we see these signs and we bring them to the toilet and nothing happens, our 30 minutes are going to kind of start over each time we leave the toilet. So, if you go at minute, right in the middle at like minute 15, we're not going to necessarily bring them back again 15 minutes later. We're just going to have to pay, fairly close attention. Accidents are going to happen with this method, with all the methods. Have them do as much of the cleanup as possible in the bathroom. So if we have an accident, oh, you went pee in your underwear, let's go to the bathroom and get new underwear. Remain very neutral and state the facts. Oh, you're wet, let's go get you dry. So that we're not creating any shame. We're not trying to have a negative association with potty training. We're not trying to make them feel like they are bad because they had an accident. They are learning. And as you well know, with all the other learning that you've had to do, learning takes time. It takes patience from us. It takes interest from them. And it does take a lot of care from us to be able to help them learn how to use the toilet. So we are going to just be very matter of fact about accidents and try to leave our emotions out of it. We obviously want them to feel like they don't want to have an accident, but we don't want them, again, to have those negative associations. Oftentimes what happens there is that we we kind of have a backfire in potty training. If we're having a lot of negative associations, kids will often kind of take the control, and potty training won't continue to work out. So those are some different approaches that we use. You do not have to say, like, okay, I'm only going to use approach 1 or I'm only going to use approach 3. It is okay to use a little bit of each one, and it's okay to kind of combine a little bit. So maybe you're thinking, I think I'm going to start out with kind of the gentle, casual approach and see how they take to it. And if they seem to be showing interest, then maybe you are going to try the 3-day method, or maybe you're going to try some scheduled training for a few days. And then you can reevaluate, is this working? Is this not working? Do I need to try something else? And kind of go from there. Again, you can find more information online about some of these approaches, have specific programs with, support from professionals and different things like that. So once we have kind of decided, okay, we're doing it, we've picked our approach, then we're going to talk a little bit about kind of the emotional aspect of potty training. Some kids pick up potty training super easily, some kids do not. And one thing I think that's so important, and this kind of goes along with what I was just saying about kind of that emotional piece and just kind of the backfiring that happens sometimes when we are a little too emotional about it, is we really want to try to choose empathy over anger. Empathy is going to overpower anger, and it's going to help us keep our emotions in check. Potty training can be frustrating, especially when we are working with kids who have some extra needs, particularly extra needs when it comes to learning. Potty training can be frustrating. Anger and negative emotions do not help at all. Punishment for accidents usually backfires. Oftentimes, kids will withhold and they won't go at all, which, as you can imagine, causes a lot of other problems. Something else to consider is, and we talked about, are they having not scheduled bowel movements, but like bowel movements on a schedule, that bladder and bowel control, things like that. If you are dealing with a lot of constipation currently, I would definitely seek to get that under control before attempting potty training. If your child is experiencing quite a bit of constipation, we're going to have a really hard time with potty training, and it's definitely going to impact other things in their life as well. I like this quote, this graphic: the opposite of anger is not calmness, it's empathy. And I think a lot of times, when we talk about opposites, we talk about happy, sad, wet, dry, some of these clean, dirty that we've talked about already in here today. If you said, like, what's the opposite of anger? If I didn't have this slide right here, I don't know that I would come up with the opposite of anger is empathy. But I really like that, because as we are doing potty training and as we get to kind of the point where we're feeling extremely frustrated and we're feeling ourselves start to get angry at our child for the lack of success, nobody wants that. So I think having that empathy and understanding, and I think this is one reason why potty training is so hard, is because as adults, we can't remember being potty trained. We just, feels like we've always been potty trained. And it's really hard for us to think about how hard it must be to go from being able to use your diaper whenever you need or want without thought. I don't think there's a lot of, concrete thinking like, oh, I need to go to the bathroom right now, I'm just going to use it in my diaper. It's just like happening as they're babies and as they're growing up. And then eventually we're telling them, nope, you can't use your diaper anymore. You need to use the toilet. And there's a lot of steps at play to get them to be successful. The next slide has another quote from Dr. John Gottman about empathy. And it's on the next slide, just kind of, again, focusing on this empathy. Empathy not only matters, it is the foundation of effective parenting. And I think this quote is really so powerful, because I do think that empathy, again, I think it is so important as we think about what are our goals in parenting. I think that this quote hopefully resonates with most parents, that yeah, I do want to be an empathetic parent. And I do want that to be, kind of how, in general, kind of how my parenting is going. I noticed in the chat that somebody shared some setup and supplies and things. There are a few links and things. So if that's something you're interested in, grab those links while we're still meeting together here. Thanks so much for sharing those. And then there's a question, is there an average age for autistic kids to learn, or just with disabilities to learn to use the potty? I'm sure that there is like some research about an average age, but I don't, I think there probably is an average age, but not necessarily in terms of expectation. So like on average, when can I expect my child to learn to use the toilet? Which again, I realize is kind of a frustrating answer. I think we have someone who's not muted right now. And if you're wanting to ask a question, that is awesome. I'd love to answer your question. If it was an accident, if you can just mute yourself, that'd be awesome. But average age in terms of when you can expect your child to be potty trained is unfortunately like across the board everywhere. I've seen kids with autism be potty trained before they're 3, and I've also seen them not potty trained until 5 or 6. Same thing with Down syndrome and other disabilities. So unfortunately, I don't have a great answer for you there. I wish I did have a better answer for you. Any other questions right now? Okay, we're going to talk about some tips and tricks. So what I like to do, of course, is start out with kind of talking about, we need to get ready. We need to evaluate those readiness signs and things for ourselves and for our kids. We need to prepare our supplies. We need to decide which method we want to use. And after we've done all that, then we've got to start, right? So now we're ready to start. Here are a few tips and tricks I like to offer as we get started. And this goes along with what we were just talking about. Do your best to stay calm. I totally get the frustration. I totally get the emotion that we feel when it comes to potty training. The more calm we can be, the better. We definitely co-regulate each other. And maybe you've heard that term before and maybe you haven't, but the idea with co-regulation is that we and our kids regulate each other. So if we are starting to escalate, our kids most likely are going to escalate with us. Oftentimes, when our kids start to escalate, we also start to escalate. And co-regulation means that we can try and bring it down a little bit. We can try and regulate ourselves a little bit so that we can help our kids regulate themselves. So it kind of happens both ways. We're able to co-regulate each other in the sense of bringing calm to the situation and also bringing chaos to the situation. So if we can stay calm, hopefully we're able to co-regulate our kids and help them to be calm as well. There is often fear associated with using the toilet. And so if we can help co-regulate them with our calmness, that might help them to feel a little bit more safe and secure about sitting on the potty and using the potty and things like that. You are not in control. However much you wish you were, you're not. However much control you want to have, it's not going to happen. We cannot make kids toilet train. The more power we try to enforce, the more they might withhold. And we do not want that. We want them to be having regular bowel movements, urinating regularly. We do not want them to be holding it in so that, we're causing health problems or other things. So this is not a good time for a power struggle because they will win. And so that doesn't really sound great to me and probably doesn't really sound great to any of you either. I'm sure you have enough times where you have to power struggle about things throughout the day. Potty training is just not one that's worth it. It really isn't. Once you start, give it a little time before giving up, but it's okay to give up. If it is, and this is the last one here on this slide, is if it's not working, don't be afraid to wait a little longer until everyone is ready. Sometimes you might think you're ready and you get started and you realize, I don't know if either one of us are actually ready for this. And then we might kind of back down to more of that gentle, casual approach. It's okay to take a break. It's not a failure if you take a break. It's just, we're going to take a break. We're going to try this again another time. Again, back to that, you're not in control. If your child is just not having success after a bit of trying, and that a bit of trying is kind of up to you. I can't give you like a set amount of time that you need to try before you call it quits. You may try for a day and realize, no, now's not the time. Or you may try for much longer before you decide to kind of move on. The next slide talks about power struggles and what we can do about it. We kind of just talked about the reason we want to avoid the power struggle. But if you find yourself in a power struggle, get out as quickly as you can, which often means we're going to have to back down a little bit, but it doesn't mean we have to give up entirely. You are still in charge. We just don't want to have a fight about it. So if you do find yourself in that power struggle, you can try offering some choices. Do you want to try the potty now or not? Do you want to go in your potty or my potty? Do you want to go now or go in a few minutes? Any kind of choices. Which one of these rewards do you want to pick for sitting on the potty? Let them have some control. Kids often, if they get a little bit of control, they often feel like they have control. And that's ultimately what they want. And if they can have a little bit of control, sometimes they will do what you're trying to get them to do. Take a step back. If we're realizing we're in a power struggle, just kind of take a step back, take a breather, try and figure out what we're struggling over, reevaluate, and then kind of try again. The last thing we want, like I mentioned, is to get in a big power struggle that leads to withholding. So the next slide has a few more tips and tricks, some that we've already talked about. So we talked about the pull-ups already, so I'm not going to go through this one again, but I do think that's a good consideration. Daytime training may occur long before nighttime training is mastered. There are some programs that suggest that once you stop diapers, you don't use any diapers at all, even at night. That's totally fine for those programs. I personally feel that that causes a lot of cleanup, a lot of accidents. Some kids just simply don't seem ready to be trained at night quite yet. Fade out your rewards as you can. Remember to reward staying dry. It's not just that we want to reward them for going in the potty, but we want to also reward them for staying dry, because that is a key part of potty training, is to be able to keep our underwear dry and clean. Ultimately, we're trying to get rid of those rewards because that's not something that is going to be sustainable over the long term. Boys can sit or they can stand. Sometimes standing can be a little bit messy, but some people prefer to train their boys to stand up. If you are standing, having them stand, you can try a Cheerio or something in the toilet to be a target, to try to get them to learn how to aim in the toilet rather than outside of the toilet, which oftentimes happens. And we're trying to teach, if little boys are standing, we're trying to teach them that they need to aim for the toilet bowl, obviously. You can try having them sit backwards and hug the tank for a little bit more stability, particularly if you have a little bit of motor instability. Being able to hold on to something can be beneficial. Few more tricks on the next slide as well, and that is that accidents are probable. Handle them with minimal emotion and move on. Keep it positive as much as possible. If flushing is something that's scary, we want to teach them that it is safe and okay to flush. We're obviously not trying to play as we're flushing the toilet, but that's something that can be helpful. We also can use a visual schedule. Here's some things that we can use in that visual schedule: pulling their pants down, sitting on the toilet, using toilet paper, flush, pull their pants up, wash their hand, so that they know what steps they need to do to kind of help with that sequence. Sometimes some data tracking is necessary. When are we seeing accidents? How long are we having, how long are we going in between? How long are we staying dry? All those things we've talked about already. And then we have a few final takeaways on the next slide. Make sure everyone is ready. Prepare before you start. Give yourself adequate time, remain calm and positive, and celebrate successes, whatever those successes are. It could be sitting on the toilet, successfully going in the toilet, staying dry, all of those kinds of things. So that is the information that I have for you today. I have a little bit of time. I mentioned in the beginning, for those that weren't quite here right at the beginning, we do have a hard stop at 11. We have a little bit of time before 11 if anyone has any questions or wants to brainstorm anything. And if you don't, that's okay too. We certainly don't have to use these final minutes if nobody has anything they want to talk about. But if anyone does, we do have a little bit of time. And Sylvia just put my email address into the chat. Like I mentioned as well, you're more than welcome to email me if you want to brainstorm about your particular situation, or if you have a question you didn't get a chance to ask it, or feel like now's not the right time, or maybe you're not even able to unmute or anything like that. Or for people who are watching the recording, you're welcome to email me as well.
Aubrey, I have a question for you.
Sure.
My son is 6 years old, and we've been doing like the gradual potty training for 2 years now. And last year, his team at school was really good and very consistent at like trying to just expose him to just like, oh, trying the potty and stuff like that. And so it was going really well. So last summer, I had a week where my husband took the kids, and I thought, okay, now's my chance. Let's go all in. And he had all the readiness signs. So I prepared, did all of that, and kind of did that 3-day approach. So he was drinking lots of water. And at first, the first day was going really well, like totally getting it. And then he just got scared. And he would poop, but he was so scared to pee. And he would hold the pee in, but he was still drinking so much. So then he started having a tummy ache. And I mean, and then by the end, I was like, okay, like I can't have this happening where I was trying all sorts of different tricks I was reading online, like with warm water and like all these different things. And he would not go. Like he just decided he was scared, and he just kept saying, I'm scared, I'm scared. And so it's been, since last summer, and I've still just kind of done this gradual approach. Okay, let's just sit on it in the morning. But he's not going anymore. And I just don't know how to even start back up again on like, I don't know. Cause I had kids that were scared to poop on the potty, but I never had kids that were like scared to pee. And so I don't know. Cause I'm like, you have to pee. So any advice on that?
I have a couple thoughts. And yeah, you're right. It is oftentimes the other way around, where kids are scared to poop on the potty, but they'll pee on the potty. Are you using just your regular toilet, or do you have a small toilet?
We have both, and I've just offered him to use which one do you want to use? And he's used both. Like sometimes he'll say, oh, I want to use the small potty. Sometimes he wants to use the big potty, but he'll never go.
Okay.
He'll still sit on the potty for me, so I'm just encouraging that. Yeah. But he's just too scared to go.
Actually go. How verbal is he?
He's fairly verbal. Like he can definitely tell me, like communicate enough as far as like potty needs and stuff. But yeah, I mean, speech is still like his biggest delay right now.
I'm curious what he's scared of, or if he's just, that's why I was curious about his verbal abilities in terms of, is he able to express more specifically what he's scared of, or just that he's scared at using, at like, trying to go pee in the potty?
It seems to me that he's scared of just that sensation of it leaving into the toilet and not in a diaper, because like he'll start to go, and then he says, oh, hurt. Like he just gets scared. It's the craziest thing. And I don't really know how to help him know it's okay.
Yeah. I don't know a lot about this, but I'm going to suggest it anyway. My sister was recently potty training my niece, and she she just wouldn't go on the potty. I don't know. I don't think she
Uh-huh.
was scared necessarily. She just would not go. And my sister, I'm not sure where she got this idea, but somewhere she got the idea to take a small cup with water and a small straw and have her blow bubbles into the cup. And something about the act of blowing also made her like release. And that was actually what got her to start peeing in the toilet. Was it was almost like
Yeah.
involuntary release because of the
Yeah.
blowing.
Yes,
So
I know. He's so cute every time because we did that with like bubbles. Like we have bubbles right
uh-huh.
by the toilet and he can blow the bubbles. And yeah, I read about that approach too. And every time I'm like, oh, I need to go potty, he goes, okay, mom, deep breaths. Like, because he knows, like, but it's still like he just won't, he'll hold it. He'll hold it in.
Have you
And so
tried
I
it with
just,
a like blowing bubbles in a cup as opposed to like a bubble wand that were actually blowing bubbles?
I could try that approach because I've only done the bubbles.
I think
So
there was
I'll
something
definitely try that.
specific. My sister's sister-in-law is, they're both nurses, but her
Uh-huh.
sister-in-law works in labor and delivery. And when she told her sister-in-law said, oh yeah, we use that with postpartum moms when they're
Oh,
having a hard time
interesting.
after delivery, that actually blowing into a cup of liquid with a straw and something. And like I said, I don't know a lot about this. So just take this, all of you
Yeah.
take this, suggestion with a grain of salt. I haven't had a chance to like research too much into it myself, but when everything seems to not be working, I wonder if that's something that might be worth a try.
So you put a little liquid in a cup and then he just
Yeah.
blows to make like the little
Mm-hmm.
bubbles in the liquid. Okay.
Yeah, like
Yeah,
basically
we'll
what
try
you
that.
don't usually want your kids doing at the table.
Right, right. Okay,
um,
perfect.
yeah, I would be curious to hear if you try it, if that does help him. I
Okay,
also
I'll try
wonder
that.
if there's anything that we can do to kind of talk about, like, I know you feel scared. So rather than trying to, like, it's not scary, because, like, it's not scary to me. For me to go pee on the
Yeah,
toilet, I'm not scared at all, but he is for whatever reason. And that's
right.
okay, to be I know you feel scared. I'm gonna try and help you so that we can do
Mm-hmm.
this scary thing together.
Yeah, okay.
And and kind of like validating that fear that he's having, even if it doesn't really make sense. And even talking
Okay.
about, like, does it feel kind of funny when the pee comes out?
Yeah, yeah.
If he, is able to kind of
Right. Yeah,
verbalize
no, he can
that.
communicate that. Mm-hmm.
Okay. Yeah, I'd
Okay.
be curious if he was kind of able to kind of have a little bit of like an aha moment of like peeing in my diaper and peeing in the toilet is really
Right.
the same when it comes to, the pee leaving his body.
I know. Right. I know. Yeah, I'll just
It
keep
is tricky.
trying. I
Yeah,
mean, he's okay to keep trying. We don't have a power struggle there. So I'm like,
that's
okay, we'll
great.
just keep every morning. Let him sit on the toilet, but okay.
Uh-huh.
So yeah, we'll just
Yeah,
keep
and
keep trying.
yeah, another thing that sometimes works, I don't know if it works as well for boys as it does for girls, is
Yeah.
to kind of have them, and this would be good before or after bath where they're already kind of no clothes anyway, is just to
Yeah.
pour a little bit of warm water on them,
Yeah. Yeah.
so that it just kind of hits them and makes almost again that release happen.
Mm-hmm.
It
Yeah,
would
that
be
does
kind of
help him. That does
okay.
help him. And then all of a sudden he'll start to go and then he just holds it.
Uh-huh.
He'll like
Okay.
stop. It is so hard. It's so crazy.
Yeah,
But yeah,
it
I
is.
had just like this little warm bottle that we'd pour.
Uh-huh.
And I don't know. I went to even an occupational therapist about it, and
Uh-huh.
they just said he's not ready. He's gonna probably not potty train for a long time because kids with Down syndrome don't potty train. And so I was like, yeah, okay.
Yeah, I think that, maybe it's true, maybe isn't true for him. I think there
Yeah,
maybe is
yeah,
again, there's something that's scaring him about it. It doesn't seem like he can't do it. It's more like something's
yeah,
bothering him about it. So,
yeah.
kind of continuing to try to figure out what it is that's bothering him
Right. And
to
I think
try to.
honestly, if I could even just have him go, even, a few more
Mhm.
times, because I felt like that's how my kids were with pooping. As soon as they did it, they were like, oh,
Like,
hey,
oh, this
that's
is
not too
fine.
scary. Okay.
Yeah.
So I think if we can just slowly get there, then it'll be okay. But he definitely has that control, you know, that bladder control, because he'll hold it. If I don't put a diaper on him in a day, he'll hold it all day long. Like, he just will not pee.
He just won't pee. Has he ever like peed outside or anything like that?
No.
I'm certainly not recommending that people, you know,
right. Yeah.
pee in the woods, but I feel like most kids learn that anyway somewhere. So
it's true. Yeah, he won't. He says he's scared every time. So, but we'll keep trying it. I'll let you know if I hear of any crazy tricks.
Yeah, I would love. Yeah, like I said, feel free to email. I'd love an update if you have some success or not. If you want to talk some more about it, feel free to email me. But yeah, I think my main suggestion would be to see if we can kind of get to the root of the fear.
Okay. Yeah. Perfect.
Kind of go from there. So good luck. Good luck to all of you.
Awesome.
For sure.
Thank you so much.
It's not easy. We probably have time for one more quick question if anybody has one. I'm not seeing anybody unmute right now. So Sylvia, I think I'll turn it back over to you. Please feel free to use my email if you had a question and you didn't feel like you had time to ask it. I'm more than happy to brainstorm with you. So feel free to email if that's something that would be helpful.
Great. Thank you so much, Aubrey. Thank you for sharing all of this knowledge and education with us. We really appreciate you spending your time and helping all of us get as much information as we can about this to set us up for success. And thank you to all of the parents who joined us today. Thank you for your time and for all of the energy and love that you put into helping support your families. Thank you so much. And I hope you guys all have a great day.